So if you're watching this video, it's because you're interested in migrating or upgrading your existing M.2 to a bigger drive. I'm going to show you how to do that today. So the reason why I'm doing it is because of this. If you look here, this is my main drive, which is the M.2, and that only has 149 gigabyte free of a 1 terabyte. We're upgrading to a 2 terabyte Crucial M.2 Gen 3 drive. So now we're going to go to macrium.com, link is in the description below, and we're going to go ahead and download the Reflect 8 free. We're just going to do a personal license and then enter your email information. In order to do the installation of the software, they're going to send you an email with your own registration code and a link to download. Once it downloads, you can go ahead and run it. And we're selecting the free. Choose where you want to install this. Once you've selected where you're going to install, we're going to download. And then we'll go ahead and finish the installation. Hit next. Make sure you read your terms and accept. It's going to ask you for your registration email address that you used and your registration code that was sent to you. And lastly, we'll leave just that default checked. It's going to ask you where you're installing it. I'm going to go ahead and choose. So on this page, it shows you all of your current disks. So I have a 1 terabyte regular hard drive. Shows you your free space and the total space. I have a disk 2 that is partitioned here. This is an SSD that I have. And then lastly, this is our primary Windows drive. And then lastly, we have our main primary drive, which is here, Windows C. This is a 1 terabyte, but I have used 782 almost gigabytes of it. So I have my drive set up, but I'm going to show you how to set yours up. So if for some reason you don't see the disk on there, you're going to go ahead and go down here to the Windows. You're going to right click. You're going to go to Disk Management. So on disk management, you're going to see that all your disks are listed. It should be listed on here as unallocated and have a black line on top if it hasn't been initialized. So for this purpose, we'll select disk 2, and what you would want to do is right click, and then you would want to hit initialize somewhere on here on the settings. Once that's initialized, you're going to come over here to the empty section. We'll just come down to this one for instance, and then you'll right click on it, and then you'll hit new simple volume, and just go through the process on there. You want to keep everything the same. You want to keep the NTSF for the file system. You want your full memory, and just go ahead and go through that whole process and let it initialize. Once it's initialized, you'll see that it's a healthy system. It'll show you how much free space you have. You can exit out of this section. And if for some reason it's not updated on here, you can click refresh, or you can close Macrium and open it back up. Once you're back on Macrium, you're going to select which disk you want to clone. In this case, it's going to be this one here, so we'll check. And we're going to go ahead and click clone this disk. You'll see the screen pop up, and you'll want to make sure that all the partitions are correctly allocated on here. So you might have 2, you might have 3, you might have 1, you might have 4. Just depends how your hard drive is partitioned at the moment. So once we're going to do that, we're going to click on select a disk to clone to, and the one that we initialized should be on here. So for my instance, it's going to be the 2 terabyte drive, so we'll select disk 3. The next thing you're going to do is click on copy partitions. On this section, you're going to see 2 options, and you want to select shrink or extend to fill the target disk. So what this is going to do is it's going to copy everything exactly as it is on your original drive that you're copying, and any free space will become part of your Windows hard drive. So it's just going to transfer all the empty space and put it into this partition. If you don't do that, it's going to copy the partitions as is. So if we were going from this, let's say we're going from the 1 terabyte to the 2 terabyte or vice versa, any extra space will be lost, and you can only use it as a simple volume. The simplest way I can explain it is just make sure that you do the shrink or extend, and it's going to automatically adjust your size for your drive. So if we were copying the 1 terabyte here to the 2 terabyte, it's going to take up all of this space that's here, but it's going to leave the rest of it free. Otherwise it would create another partition and that would be wasted space. So you're going to hit next. If you wanted to schedule, you could. We're not going to schedule in this case. Hit next, and then just make sure that everything is good. And then the next thing you're going to hit is finish. And then if you want to do any backups, you can name it and you can save it in your folder, and you hit OK. So you'll let that run through the whole process. So once it's done, it'll come to this final page, and then you can verify through here. We can go back to local disk and we can check everything that's here, and then you'll see that everything has been copied over. Usually the timing is going to depend on your drive. If you're going from a regular hard disk, it could take several hours. If you're doing a regular SSD drive, it could take a few minutes to an hour, a couple hours. It really just depends on how much data you have, how much complicated data that you have. It's going to really vary. In my case, they were M.2 to M.2. It took about 52 minutes to do it in total. Okay, so I don't have a capture card, so I'm going to show you guys how this works. So we're going to shut down the PC. Alright, so at this point, I had to remove my graphics card in order to take off the plate that goes there, which is this one here. It pretty much covers this whole thing here. So this is the faster lane on my motherboard, so now I'm going to swap drives so that this one's going to be the primary on top. That's where you're going to get the most speed from. We'll go ahead and turn it on. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the BIOS, and that way we can switch our boot drive. And then in my motherboard, the access to the BIOS is through the delete. All right, so we're in the BIOS now. For this board, you're just going to go into settings and then go into the boot menu here. And then what you're going to select is your boot option here. So boot option 1. And you're just going to go to, if it's not automatically selected, so here's my second disk, the WDC. If you wanted to leave it on your second one, you would just make that one your primary. I'm going to go ahead and do the Windows Boot Manager, which is the new drive that I put in. And that's it. If you were going to switch it, you would just double click onto this one, and that would make it your default boot option 1. So since it didn't require me to change anything, I can go ahead and exit out of this. And we didn't make any changes, so we're going to hit yes. And then we're just going to wait for it to boot. And mine should go through the process here, but it'll start on this screen. All right, and we're in here. So we've booted up into Windows. So first thing we're going to do is just double check that everything is good. We're going to go here into our Windows Explorer, this PC. And as you can see, this is my SSD. There's the 1 terabyte. There is my 1 terabyte hard disk, and our Windows now, that is the 2 terabyte. So everything checks out here. So the next thing we're going to do is figure out what we're going to do with our drive. So if you wanted to leave it as a redundant system, you can leave it as a redundancy and just leave it here in case something happens here. I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to go ahead and delete everything off of this one and then just save it as as extra space. So the way we do that is we're going to go down to the search bar here, and we're going to type in CMD for command prompt. You're going to go to it and right click and run as administrator, and you're going to go to yes. This brings you up to your command prompt as an administrator with authorities. So what that means is it's going to give you a couple things that you can do. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to type diskpart. DISPART, one word. Okay, so what that shows is your computer, which mine is called Flash. So the next thing we're going to do is type in list disk, LIST DISK. Hit enter, and this shows you all your disk on here. So the next thing we're going to do is it shows you disk 0, 1, 2, and 3. Well, how do you know which disk is what? So the easiest way to figure that out, which it's kind of easy because we have our 2 terabyte here, this is our SSD, but we have 2 1 terabyte drives, so you don't want to delete the wrong one. So we're going to go down here to start. I'm going to right click, go to disk management. We're going to slide this over a little bit so we can see, and we can make it a little bit bigger. So as you can see, disk 0 is our hard drive, our hard disk. Our disk 1 is our SSD drive. Our disk 2, of course, is our 2 terabyte drive, and disk 3 is our 1 terabyte drive. So what we want to do is completely clean it. So what I mean by that is, if you can come here and you can delete all these partitions that are on here, but it's not going to unite all three of them. So what you want to do is you want to have just one clean drive. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put select disk, and then we're going to put 3. And again, this is going to vary by your system. It depends on how many hard drives you have. You might only have 1 and 2, or 0 and 1. And you know, it really depends on how you have it set up. If you have a bunch of hard drives, then you're going to see all of them here. So just kind of make sure you know which one you're looking at, and you're going to hit select enter. I'm sorry. So after disk 3 is selected, we're going to make sure that's disk 3, and what we're going to do is clean. So what this is going to do is it's going to completely wipe out that drive. And once you do this, you're not getting any of the information back. So as you can see here, we now have a new disk. Disk 3, 931 terabyte, unallocated. So as you can see, we have our disk 3, unknown, and it says not initialized and unallocated. So normally if you go to a drive, you can select on there and you can do different options. Since it's not initialized, if you go here, it won't let you do anything except properties. So what you want to do is you want to click on this square, and you're going to initialize the disk. And yes, disk 3, we're going to leave it as GPT. Hit OK. Just give it a second and it'll say online. Now we have options. So we click on the long rectangle here, right click, new simple volume, and this is the volume wizard. Very easy to use. You hit next. Of course, we want to use the entire size. Unless you want your own specific partitions, you can do 2 partitions and use one as a virtual machine. You can run Linux, you can run different systems, and then you can have the rest of the space for just your whatever Windows files you want to have. In my case, I just want to leave it alone. I just want a blank drive. We hit next. Assign a letter. You can choose any letter. If your drive has already been used, it will not repeat the letter again. I'm just going to go ahead and give it drive T. So we hit next, and of course we're going to format the volume, and we're going to name it. So I'm going to name this as flash 1 TB M.2. That way I know that this is my old flash 1 terabyte drive and it's the M.2. So we'll hit next, finish. It's going to format it. Should take roughly a couple seconds to a minute, no more than a minute. It usually does pretty quick. And here's our new space. So if we go back to this PC, we now have our SSD. We have our 1 terabyte hard disk drive. We now have a blank 1 terabyte M.2 drive and our new Windows 2 terabyte drive. Fantastic. All this empty space. And to verify, again, we can go down here, back to command prompt and run as administrator. Again with disk part. List disk. And it shows our 4 drives again. So fantastic. So guys, that's really it. You can now enjoy your new drive. Here I still have 1 terabyte free. You know, I was using a lot of memory on it and I was running out. I primarily run Flight Sim. So Flight Sim has a lot of files. All the texture files take up a lot of space. All these add-on airplanes, you know, basically just starts eating up the memory. So it's really nice to have that. And I think what I'm going to do in the future is move everything that I have from Flight Sim on here to just dedicate it to that 1 terabyte M.2. So that's my plan for it. I'm glad I have now all this space to use. I use the 1 terabyte hard disk. I don't know if any of you are curious, but I keep all of my low program files on here. So anything that's like for benchmarking, pretty much anything that doesn't require high read speeds, I dedicate to this. So I can show you. I have just backups of pictures and stuff like that, and you know, it really doesn't do a whole lot besides that. And then I keep here all of my program files. All of these programs really don't require a lot. You know, I run Steam off of it and all that, so it really doesn't affect it. So that's what I use it for. I just finished running the benchmark on Crystal Disk Mark. I'll also leave a link down in the description below if you want to use that. So our read speeds are here, our write speeds are there. Fantastic. Advertised was 35, so that's great. These are my other drives. That's the 1 terabyte that I have in there, and then this is the SSD that I have, and then this is the write speed for just the standard hard drive disk. So this is a good example of how much you're missing out if you haven't upgraded. You know, if your board has the ability to do the M.2, I definitely recommend it. So you're going from 60 megabytes per second to 3669. That's ridiculous. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to help you. Just leave them down below. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.